I'm sticking to that story.
I said, oh, yeah.
She knows, what do you think she wanted?
We get on for next, first he wanted tonight, then he wanted next month, and I said,
All right.
I said, no, I don't think so.
The meeting will please come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been that on January 19, 2022, a copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location was posted on a bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, mailed, faxed, or emailed to the Courier News, given to the clerk administrator, and put on the borough's website. If any member believes that this meeting is being held in violation of the Open Public Meeting Act, please state your views this time. None? Okay. These proceedings are of a judicial nature. Proper judicial decorum must and will be maintained. Only those items on our agenda will be addressed. Okay? Rid of that. Number 2. Roll call, please.
Art Adair.
Here.
Dan Javits.
Here.
Roberta Carpenter.
Here.
Brian Ladimski.
Here.
Rich O'Neill.
Here.
Ed Ellett.
Here.
John Flores.
Here.
Eric Alvarez.
Here.
Morgan McLaughlin, I guess will not be present this evening.
Okay, would someone move that Morgan's absence be recorded as excused?
So moved.
So moved. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. The next, honor our country by saluting our flag. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chair, for something else. Okay, next item, resolution for Bell Avenue.
I'll move it. I'll second.
Moved and second. The affirmative vote is for the resolution.
And those eligible to vote on it are those who voted on the application.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Art Adair.
Yes.
Dan Javits.
Yes.
Roberta Carpenter.
Yes.
Brian Ladimski.
Yes.
Rich O'Neill.
Yes.
Ed Ellett.
Yes.
And Eric Alvarez.
Yes.
Yeah, it's carried. Okay, next item is land use. Black Diamond.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Alex Fisher. I represent the applicant Black Diamond Realty. They own property at 195 West High Street and will be seeking a use variance to use the property as a duplex. We have 3 witnesses tonight for the board. The first will be our civil engineer, Jim Mance. The second will be our architect, Ken Baldock. And finally, we'll hear from the planner, Tom Barron. So I'd like to move into testimony if there's no questions for me initially.
May I swear the first witness? You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, in this matter will be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is James J. Mantz, M-A-N-T-Z.
Very good. Mr. Fisher, your witness, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Metz, could you give the board the benefit of your qualifications in the field of civil engineering?
I graduated Rutgers College of Engineering in 1977. I received my professional engineer's license in 1982, my land surveyor's license in 1992. Since that time, I've worked in the land development field. I've testified before probably 3/4 of the municipalities in Somerset County, a third at least in Hunterdon County, where I do most of my work, Hunterdon, Somerset. I recently testified before the Borough of Southbound Brook and Warren Township Planning Boards.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Go ahead if you'd like to describe the
All right.
property.
The property that we're dealing with is located on the southerly side of West High Street, approximately 100 and
Let's mark this as a, let's mark this as a,
I think the board should be moved so it,
Camera together.
If this is a exact copy of what was submitted in the application,
Right.
do we have to mark it?
No, I have
No,
A
if
three.
it's an exact copy, then we do not have to.
What I'm reading.
You need to come to me, right?
Just so they can.
Oh, okay.
Right here. Right.
Can everybody see it?
We're trying to get
That's-
the camera. Anybody see it?
We have it in front of us.
The plan I'm referring to is entitled Variance Map Block 131 for, Variance Map for Block 131 Lot 3, Black Diamond Realty, and it's dated revised 4/14 of 22. It should be the plan that was submitted to the board. As I started to say, the property is located on the southerly side of West High Street, 183 feet from Mountain Avenue. The property is a little bit irregular in shape, but it is 50 feet wide and approximately 185 feet deep. The lot area is 9,123 square feet. We're located in the PO-R zone where the required lot area is 10,000 square feet. So it's an existing undersized lot in terms of lot area. The zone requires a 60-foot lot width. We only have 50 feet width and frontage, so we need variances, or we have a pre-existing condition for that. The minimum required lot depth is 100 feet, and we have 179.18 feet. There's an existing 2.5-story frame dwelling or frame structure on the property. The front setback to the porch is 15.5 feet. The required front setback is 25 feet. The minimum distance to the side lot line is 4.0 feet, and we have, the requirement is 8 feet. The requirement for a total is 20 feet, and we only have 11.8 feet. The property is accessed by an existing driveway on the east side of the building, the east side of the lot. The driveway is, the edge of the driveway runs down the easterly property line for a portion of that lot line. And that driveway is 6.7 feet until it reaches approximately halfway along the building, where then the concrete ends and there's a macadam area that it widens out. The macadam area is a little bit in disrepair. When I was out there, there's some sort of garbage and so forth, and it wasn't really in great repair. There's also, the driveway also continues in a southerly direction to an area which I believe was an old garage at one point in time. There's a concrete slab remaining. When I was out there earlier this year, it was all covered in vines and so forth. And what we propose to do is to remove a portion of that driveway to make our lot coverage less. One of the items in the engineer's letter is what are we going to do with the concrete slab. I didn't show it on the site plan as to be removed, but we would agree to remove that. And that's going to make the coverage even better than that we show on this particular
You're gonna remove the
plan.
entirety of the concrete slab?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like a 10 by 12, right, or
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not a
very
huge
big.
pad, yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure.
The zoning, what we proposed are two bedroom units in this particular dwelling. The zoning requires a 1.5 parking spaces per unit, so that 3 parking spaces are required. And what I propose to do is to extend the existing pavement in a westerly direction, so we have the 24-foot turnaround, we have 18-foot spaces, so we have regular parking spaces, and we would increase that parking area by about 250 square feet, but we are removing a substantial area in the back. So overall, the impervious area, impervious coverage on this particular property is reduced. From an outside point of view, that's really what we propose to do. Now we have the letter from your engineer, which I will go through it, unless there's any questions right now.
I have a question. It's gonna be difficult for those three cars to be able to turn around without taking that back porch out. Would you agree that we might have a little turnaround in the southerly direction where the note that says irregular edge of pavement? Maybe give us 10 feet of pavement there so they could actually back out, turn, and then go straight out the driveway?
Yes, I would agree to that.
Okay.
My daughter could rent the place, otherwise she's taking your porch off.
We taught her how to drive.
That's,
It's not a fire truck.
going through Mr. Cole's report dated September 14th, 2022. The first several pages are informational. Page 3 is a zoning chart, and he's requested that I put this zoning chart on my plan with additional information, which I would agree to do.
Just to be clear, these are the variances in order to pre-existing non-conformities,
Yes.
and we're not exacerbating them, we're increasing them in any way.
Yeah, but for Alex, I'm sure your plan will say it's a change of use. I would agree with that, saying it's a pre-existing, it's a single use. But since you're going for a use variance, I'm treating it as new uses. I agree with you, nothing's changed.
Right.
I'm just making, I'm sure your planner will.
And we, will provide planning testimony for
Right.
the C variances.
Right.
Okay, getting into item number 4A, parking and circulation on page 5. I've agreed to remove the concrete slab. We're expanding the parking area somewhat, and we're going to have a small turnaround. And I've talked with the owner about repaving the parking area. And if in fact during construction or we find out that the pavement is not substantial, we would repave it with 2 inches. But I don't want to have, but only if it's damaged during construction. It's what the applicant wants to do.
Yeah, it just looks really weathered. Really weathered.
It does.
Are you talking about the back?
There's a driveway back there, it looks to be oil and chip, that it's just weathered. It's
Right.
very, it's old. It's very, very
It
old.
is old.
And my concern is when you put equipment on there to put the expansion,
Mhm.
it might rut, it might not hold the weight, it might, it's not, aesthetically, it's not gonna look good in my opinion.
And how about the concrete pads from the street to the rear of the building?
Well, we're just getting there, right? That's item number 3. Morgan and I had said that they have, it's one driveway apron for both driveways, and both driveways are undersized. Being undersized, the ordinance says the minimum width is 10 feet, and they're both under 10 feet. I went up there and looked at it. Normally, I would suggest getting an easement so that, because they're now driving on each other's, potentially going in and out. But it's almost equal, and it seems to be working, so I threw it up that I don't know that easement's really worth it in this situation. Being his driveway and the other driveway are like both 6 or 8 feet, so they're both going over. The apron is wide enough for both of them, and the driveways kiss each other. So you don't have any, I understand you could make an argument that if the guy next to him doesn't maintain his driveway, you could have running in a problem down the road. But that situation seems to be about 80 years old. I mean, that common driveway, it seems to be working. So I threw it out. I don't know if Jim has an opinion on that, on the easements needed or not.
I don't believe an easement's needed either. When I was there was a car that the occupant was parked in the driveway, and there was actually another car that went out the property to the east, and so it was functional.
Right.
Yeah, but that concrete, I guess you'd call it a curb between the 2 driveways,
Yes.
that really is in the way. Is there some way that they can come to an agreement where they just pave that over so it's easier to go in and out rather than going up and over that concrete curb?
We can try to see if we can work something out with the neighboring property owner. But if they're not responsive or don't want to do,
Who owns the
we
curb?
can just use.
The edge, the curb is on our property. The back edge is right on the property line.
Right.
Well, it's not the neighbors.
So I think we would agree to then remove that curb.
Yeah. I was going to say.
That would then allow vehicles from our property than to drive on the adjoining property rather than being confined by the curb. So I don't know whether that would be appropriate or not.
Just want to confirm, Mr. Fisher, that the neighbor got, I know your notice was fine.
Yeah.
Were you in any way contacted by the neighbor or?
So,
Okay, all right. Just checking that for the record.
So go back to the concrete. The concrete slab looks like it's in not so great shape either.
It's old. It's
Yeah.
very, very old, and it does, there's an elevation changes, as Dan has mentioned. And that's where I was getting at. If you start doing the concrete and doing the back, you might as well just pave the thing. It's all very old, and my assumption is it's not 2 inches thick because this wasn't done that way.
I wouldn't think it is.
Right.
So would you pave over the concrete or do you remove the concrete?
No, I think Dan has it right. It is a little slight elevation. It's not a smooth ride. That's what he's saying. There is an elevation change. So if you took it off and put blacktop down to match grades out there, you'd be all brand new and hopefully smooth and match, so they could both use it without any rumble strip effect, right, Dan?
For safety as well.
Yeah.
Which way will the water drain?
I haven't been into that. There was no grades, Rich, on the plan, and I had a hard time looking with the naked eye how the drainage was.
It's fairly flat, and I don't know, I did add some grades after, on one of the plans, and they're in gray, and they're hard to read, but the slope is from the south to the southeast, away from West High Street.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my concerns, was trying to get the stormwater management to the street, because even though the improvement coverage is being less, we're putting that asphalt up against the property line, and it usually, if it's going to be shutting off to the property, to the neighbor's property, it sometimes invites problems in terms of complaints.
That neighborhood generally drifts to the south.
Yeah. Look, if it's the grade, it's the grade. You can't get to the street with roof leaders or anything else. You can't do it. It is what it is. I asked the question if it's possible to get there, but it's not possible.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to get the roof leaders out there.
Okay.
I took elevations with my shot, I just didn't put them on the plan. When I prepared this thing, it was more of a survey for, to continued use or a variance and not a full site plan.
Right.
But I do have the grades, and when I checked them today, I don't believe I can get the roof leaders out. But I'll put additional grades on the plan so we can see what's happening.
Right, if we could just get the water main directly south as opposed to going west, because the property line's right there, we can get enough attenuation across some grass or something, Jim. I'm just trying to, one of the hot topics here in the borough is always stormwater runoff. So when you're doing a new project, even reducing it, sometimes it raises concerns that might have been there, but now they're raised again. So we can somehow, I got the grades of the grades, but if we're going to pave it, if we can tweak it so the runoff is directly south, so we can get across some of the grass from the driveway.
Yeah, I think we could probably dish the driveway a little bit to make the water then run down and then into the grass, and it would then try to wander in a southerly direction, away from that easterly lot line. So we'd end up repaving the driveway. I'm just saying to the client that seems to be an agreement with the board to make the most sense.
So we did all not.
Yeah.
That's what
So that, I guess that takes care of number 2 on page 5. We just talked about the driveway being item number 3, so we're okay. Item number 4, we're removing the slab, and we get into site lighting. Whatever lighting we put on this particular building, we would meet the borough ordinances. Landscaping, I think number 1 is just a comment. There is a row of shrubs along the westerly line, and that iron pipe is right underneath in the center line of the privet, so it was probably planted right down the lot line. Item number 2, a tree and debris are located on the property. The owner told me today that he has cleaned that up. If in fact he hasn't, then we'll remove that tree or clean that up. As far as the stockade fences, there's a stockade fence pretty much right on the property line between our lot adjoining lot number 4. And in the back, it's a little bit weird. The stockade fence, I believe, belongs to lot number 22, although it continues more in a straight line where there's an angle point in the property line. Because it's their fence, I don't think I would propose to remove it. I would just leave it. It's in existing condition. I don't think we should do anything with that.
Yeah, it's just sections are falling down.
Yeah,
so-
we would upgrade or repair the fence where necessary to make it functional.
Right, but you're saying that the sections falling down are not the applicant's fence, it's the neighbor's fence.
I don't remember which sections were falling down. I know I had a hard time shooting
Yes.
underneath the fence because there's an existing building that's very close to the lot line.
Right, I think it's the fence that's off the property line. That was my question, is the fence, is that whole fence the applicant's fence? So it was,
No, it's not the applicant's fence.
okay, so
It's-
we're talking about a fence, it's the neighbor's fence.
Yes, I believe it is, but encroaches on our property.
Okay.
So we would repair on the common line between our lot and lot number 4. I don't think we would do anything to the fence because it's not our fence.
Yeah, but
Along
if
the
the fence
south.
is on your property, I'm not a lawyer, but I see your wheels spinning. If the fence is the other guy's fence, but it's on your property, it's not his fence, right? It's your fence if it's on your property.
It's really not his fence. If he built it on your property, he builds it at his own risk.
I don't think it becomes your property if he builds it. For instance, it's still their fence in a trespass condition.
Correct, yeah, I mean.
It doesn't become your fence. You don't take ownership of it.
Yeah, but you could tear it down if you wanted.
You could, I was gonna say, you could tear it down, exercise authority to do that.
So what are we going to do?
Sounds like you have a great neighbor. No offense if the neighbor's online, but, you know, on the broadcast, but, you know, I think you gotta.
Look, the fence is in disrepair. There's a couple of sections that fell down on the applicant's side, it fell down to the north, the section.
So in taking the concrete slab, we'll just pick up those
I think you
fence
should-
sections.
If you could just take the debris up then, I
I
mean,
think you should take the debris, exactly, and I don't think you're beyond your rights in doing that in any way.
C number 4 on page number 6 talks about a tree, and we'll plant a tree in the front of the property rather than giving the $650. So we'll put the necessary details on the site plan along with the grades that we've agreed to. I guess we jump pretty much then to item D on page number 7. We talked about the runoff. We're going to add grades, that takes care of item number 2. I don't believe that there's icing on the front apron. The grades show that the slope is from the sidewalk toward the street and then from the sidewalk down in a southerly direction.
yeah, Jim, you're saying there's no sheet rotor runoff from the driveway onto the sidewalk onto the street?
No,
It's all to the
no.
southern? So
Yes.
we don't have an icing condition coming off the property in the wintertime is what you're
No, we
saying?
don't. And then, again, item number 4, I'll check again, but I don't believe that we can get the roof leaders out to underneath the
Right.
curb because it's just too flat.
Understood.
And that takes care of, I believe, my portion of the comments in Mr. Pohl's letter.
Anybody from the board have any questions of the testimony just given? Anybody from the audience have any questions of the testimony just given?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just a note, can you communicate with the neighbor about that fence, about the fence issues, or are they just not communicative at all? Or is it an absentee landlord or something?
You can try, but can't guarantee that they'll respond.
Now, if my memory serves me right, those landlord came before us many years ago for variances.
And then Clifford Polly Island.
I'm not trying to cause a problem,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
I'll go through South Carolina next month.
Just up on top of it.
Take the resolution with you.
Yeah. I'm quite sure they did though. That was many months ago.
All right.
Anybody?
Any further questions?
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
All right, I have our architect, Ken Walbeck, if you could swear him in, please. Sure. Come up.
Good evening, sir. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Kenneth R. Quaybeck, Uaeeck.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, your witness, sir.
Quaybeck, can you give your professional background for the benefit of the board?
Sure. I graduated from Roger Williams University in 1991, 5-year accredited school. Was licensed in 1995. I've been practicing architecture ever since. I've been operating Philip Architecture as a principal for the last 20 years. I've served before hundreds of boards throughout New Jersey. We complete a lot of different work. From
Give me three local.
corporate Hillsborough, Raritan Borough. This is actually my first appearance before Somerville, surprisingly. Montgomery Township, various counties.
Thank you, Mr. Quaybeck.
You want to continue with your testimony and exhibits?
Sure. The boards that I have are simply copies of what you have in front of you. They are EX1, EX2, A1, and A2. EX1 and EX2 are simply copies of the existing basement, first and second floor, to give you an idea of what currently exists. The building is a 5B constructed building, essentially a wood frame building on a masonry foundation. Very typical for residential or light commercial. Currently, there are 2 units. It's being used as a duplex. One unit is on the first floor, the other unit is on the second floor. If you turn to EX1, is simply the basement. And the only issue I'd like to point out in the basement is, given the uncertainty as to the timing of the previous uses and when they changed, there are 2 electric meters, there are 2 gas meters, there's 1 furnace, and there's 1 water heater. So at some point in time, this building was determined to contain 2 different uses, and some attempt was made to actually divvy up the utilities accordingly. At present, the basement is not occupied. The ceiling height is about 7'6". I'll get into some of Mr. Cole's comments in the report, but one of which was clarification of the ceiling heights and the use of the spaces. The basement is simply for utilities and some light storage by the occupants.
You say there's 1 furnace?
There is, yes.
Is that gonna continue to be the case?
I believe the owner is going to seek to have 2 furnaces installed, 1 for each individual unit.
Is that a definite?
Planning for that.
No,
Okay.
it's not gonna work.
Okay, we're gonna do it.
Yes.
That works.
Well, while we're talking about that, then where would you put them?
In the basement,
Yeah, everything you guys.
most likely, yeah.
Okay.
We're not sure, we haven't gotten into everything as to where the layout is, but it's a gas furnace, so it should be fairly easy to serve the 2 units.
Mr. Fisher, would you like to have your property owner testify if that's the case?
I'll have to give
Yeah.
I swear I'm just to make sure.
I think we can just represent these matters for him, but if you want to swear him in just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah, but
I don't mean to be
Mr. Rankin,
sneaky.
if you want to.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Chang Wang, last name Wang, W-A-N-G.
Very good. Okay, Mr.
Thank you.
Fisher, thank you very much for cooperating.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Drawing EX2 in front of you shows the 2 units as they currently are. The 2 units actually utilize a main common entry, which is shown directly on the left by the main set of stairs that access the porch. As you enter that entrance, immediately to the right as you enter, that is the access to the 2nd floor unit. If you proceed straight ahead, that is the access to the 1st floor unit. There are actually 2 doors that exist at this location. If you look to the right of the existing first floor plan at the top along the porch, you'll see the second door, which was used at some point. Again, we're not sure of what the exact configuration was, but that door has been there for quite some time, at least 10, 15, 20 years in my estimation. And when we seek to return this to a legal duplex, we plan to utilize that door as one of the entrances. On the next page.
Why would you do that? It's a bedroom. Why would you do that?
There are some code implications. There are different use groups involved, whether you are a residential use. If you seek to use a common entrance and exit, that's one use. Whether you seek separate entrance and exits, that's another use. So there are some code implications there. And it's also preferable to have separate entrances and exits whenever possible.
I don't understand that. Stephen?
Common entrance egress and sometimes requirements.
Oh, okay. Is the sprinkler requirement the issue then, basically?
It's not been determined yet, but it's an issue between an R5 use, which is a typical duplex, or an R3, which is more commonly applied to apartment buildings. Because you have much more people following through the same common entrance. So that's a higher hazard. So we're simply seeking to make it as safe and as independent as possible for everybody involved. On A1, you can see the proposed basement plan. The proposal is to add furnace and water heater, but not add living space, to retain the basement as simply a storage and utilitarian area. Drawing A2 gives you the proposed renovations for the first and second floor. Currently, the first floor unit is a 3-bedroom unit. We're seeking to convert that to 2 bedrooms. The second floor unit is currently 2 bedrooms, and we're seeking to maintain that as a 2-bedroom unit. If you look,
I'm sorry about that.
if you look at the first floor plan, you can see the 2 large dark arrows, which would indicate separate entrances from the existing porch. We're seeking to utilize the same doors that have been there. And then with some modifications to the interior partitions, it's very easy to accommodate 2 separate units. There are some comments in Mr. Cole's letter, which I'll get into in a minute, relative to some utility areas and things of that nature. But overall, the main structure is being maintained, and there aren't any major structural alterations planned. The alterations are fairly minor in the whole scheme of things to maintain separate entry, exit, and 2 units. Going to Mr. Cole's report, I believe it's on page 8. There were 9 items seeking some clarification. First item related to the provisions for adding a separate entrance door. Just wanted to reiterate that there are 2 currently. One just is not being used, and we plan to maintain those 2. Item number 2, noted that there are some deficiencies, some maintenance items relative to the soffits. The porch is in disrepair in some areas. Some of those repairs have already been done over the last few months by Mr. Wang, and he takes no exception, and he plans to proceed with repainting, repairing, and restoration as needed to restore it back to good condition. Item number 3 indicates some clarifications for the floor. The ground floor apartment has very minor modifications, basically restoring that second door back to what was an entry, including an entrance closet. There'll be a small utility room behind it. And other than that, there's some minor modifications to a bathroom and a bedroom, but otherwise, we're talking limited partition work. One concern that was raised was the first floor indicates a new utility room for the second floor unit. And it also indicates a stackable washer dryer for the second floor. That was simply indicated as an option to the owner, and he would elect to provide the stackable unit upstairs and maintain the new utility closet as simply a closet and entry, miscellaneous storage, that type of thing. So there is no intention for 2 utility rooms to be provided, just one on the second floor. Item number 5, the crawl space. Again, I think the highest ceiling height to the underside of the joist is about 6'7", 6'7 3/4". That will remain a storage and unfinished space. Utilities to the building, we don't anticipate any major upgrades. We believe anything that needs to be upgraded will actually be within the building, so we don't foresee having to run new gas lines or new electric lines and things of that nature, especially given the existing dual gas and electric meters that currently exist. Ceiling heights in the apartments was questioned. The first floor of the main structure is 8'8" within the main parts of the building, which include the living room, dining, bedroom, and kitchen areas. There was an addition at some point, which then reduces down to about 7 foot or to 7'6". But it does meet the minimum height requirement of 7 foot for living space. There are some drop ceilings and things of that nature, so we're not really sure necessarily if some piping was run below the ceilings or that type of thing, but that's the reason for the variation in the ceiling heights. The second floor apartment is in very good condition. Very little, if any, modifications have occurred there over the years, and that ceiling height varies between 7'9" and 7'10". Item number 8 relates to trash cans and recyclables. We do anticipate them being stored behind the building, taken out to the curb as would be typical. And then item number 9, the last item, relates to the attic. The attic is not currently a finished space. From the exterior, the windows that are shown that access the attic are actually very low to the floor. The attic is not conducive to a living space. There's no plan to make it a living space. And the second floor apartment does have an attic scuttle, but there's no storage or anything of that type there currently, and it's not anticipated to be used for that.
Could it be used for heating and air conditioning?
It could be, yeah, that's possible.
Well, while we're talking about that, is this going to be air conditioned?
Most likely, yes.
So, if you're going to air conditioning, you're going to have a condenser permanent.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find a place to put that.
Yeah, any condensers would be located at the rear of the building, out of sight.
And if you're doing that, you're going to have separate air conditioning units. Could you not have separate HVAC units? One provided from the attic and one provided from the basement, so everybody's independent?
It's possible, yes. Yeah.
It hasn't been determined yet whether
Correct.
it's all central air or window units.
Correct.
Ken, on the first floor apartment, are those working fireplaces in there?
They are not. They've been locked in. Hard to tell when they were operable. We do know that there were neurologist offices in this building. There was also a daycare, an adult daycare facility in the building. It's unclear which floors they may have been on. And it's also unclear when the fireplaces may have last been used. But they are blocked up currently.
So when the owner bought the property, were they using it illegally as a two-family?
My understanding that it was already converted when they bought it at the sheriff's sale in 2011, and so it looks the same now as it was when it was purchased.
It basically is two apartments already.
Right.
Right, I don't think the borough has any records of two-family, so I don't know if they got construction permits and all that.
Just the legal change of use.
That's what it looks like, and then, right, that's what the application says, that the applicant bought a sheriff's sale, this is the way it was.
Correct.
The sheriff's sale was 2011?
2011, okay.
I had consulted with Brett Trout, tax assessor, and the property is listed as a commercial property. And the property card that he has is not accurate relative to the spaces that exist.
Kind of blended into the pot.
So he would, you know, once everything is said and done, he would likely want to revisit the property and update the record.
I'm quite sure he will.
Yeah, I'm sure it's it. Any other questions on the architectural?
Any questions? Any other questions? Anybody from the audience with any questions?
Well, I just had one on the HVAC to follow up with Rich in my general comments. I said if you're gonna put the AC convenience, just make sure you meet the state noise code on that. Give some documentation, you put them a foot off the property line, two of them together, just make sure they meet, that's all.
Sure. Well, if we're talking them, I mean, not a question, but are you seriously considering window units in this day and age?
We always look towards doing a combined heating and air conditioning system. Budget plays a role, constructability, logistics also play a role, so we really haven't gotten that far yet, but it will be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so, Mr. Chairman, we have our third witness, the planner, Tom Behrens, from Somerville.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Tom Behrens, last name Behrens.
Very good. Mr. Fisher?
Mr. Behrens, can you give us your professional qualifications for the board?
Sure, I'm a licensed professional planner with the firm Burgess Associates located in Westwood, New Jersey. I also hold the American Institute of Certified Planner credential, or AICP. Through our firm, I regularly sit with a number of planning and zoning boards. I probably sat with boards in over 20 municipalities, including in Burnsville and P-PAC, a few local ones. I've also been qualified as an expert on the private side in over 10 municipalities throughout New Jersey. I currently provide zoning officer services in 2 municipalities, and I'm the in-house planner in the city of Summit. And I've been qualified as an expert planner in the counties of Bergen, Essex, and Hunterdon and Superior Courts.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll step over here. Heard quite a bit about the property already, and that it's located on.
Do you need to mark these?
Yes, we do.
All right, so if you want to go through each one.
We'll start from the top. Yeah, so A1 will be an exhibit of site images. We have an aerial image and a street perspective entitled Site Images.
Can you mark that A1, please, and put the date on it?
Put it A6, please.
A6.
A6, I'm sorry.
921. The second exhibit will be expanded aerial view of the surrounding development pattern entitled Site Aerial Map, which will be A7. Finally, we have a land use map of the surrounding area entitled Surrounding Land Use Map,
Good time.
which is A8, I believe.
Yes.
Starting with the site area map. So as you've already heard, the site is located on West High Street between Mountain Avenue to the west and North Downey Avenue to the east. As you've heard too, the site is undersized in terms of lot area. It's 9,000
123 square feet where a minimum of 10,000 square feet is required. It also has a minimum, it has a lot width of 50 feet where a minimum lot width of 60 feet is required. So as you can see, the lot is quite narrow and deep relative to the surrounding community. In terms of site history and preparing for this application and conducting research, as was noted, there are limited borough records for this property. We do know that the last CCO was issued for the property in 2007 for an assisted living / elder social day club. But as was testified to, there's evidence that the building was also used for medical offices prior to 2007, and that the structure had been divided into 2 separate units for perhaps a variety of uses over time. And since at least 2011, the site has been used as 2-family residence. And I believe our client, since purchasing the property, has also been assessed the borough's fee for 2-family use. Looking back to this, try not to be too redundant, but this is a site given sort of a bird's eye perspective. You can see that the dwelling is oriented toward the front of the property. It does have a non-conforming front yard setback of about 15 feet, where a minimum of 25 feet is required. Here you can see the parking area that's been referred to right now as currently paved. It shows 3 cars neatly parked there. We're of course going to update that area, modernize it, and perhaps create even a little more wiggle room. The area of additional pavement to be removed is along this area of the property, which records indicate had gone back to a detached garage, which had been demolished. There was a permit for that. To get the exact date, but there was a permit for that. Directly to the west, I believe it is a dental office, which it also looks like there's an apartment unit on the 2nd floor. And this is a 2-family building directly next door to the east. And this is a view as observed from West High Street with the subject property in the middle of the site. To the right, we have that dental office building, mixed-use dental office building, and the 2-family dwelling to the left or east. As was testified to by our client's architect, both the first and second floors have been divided into residential units, each containing their own living spaces, bedrooms, kitchen, and full baths. The units do share a common front entrance, and there's a basement with mechanicals and laundry appliances, with some separate utilities for those units. As was also noted, there's the driveway that's situated on the left of the property, providing access to the rear parking area. And we'll also note by virtue of this exhibit that there's an expansive rear area for recreation purposes for potential future residents. Moving now to the site aerial map. With respect to the surrounding development pattern, the site is located just under 2 blocks from the Main Street corridor. So if you went, I guess, in the southeasterly direction, you'd be right at Main Street with the mix of uses and amenities here. So I would suggest that the site and the neighborhood are generally walkable from that perspective. The site is also located about a block from public bus service on West End Avenue, and it's about a half mile from the Somerville train station, which is located to the southeast in this direction. Flipping to the land use map. This was created basically to show an area within 2 blocks of the site contained within the POR zone, which is where the site is located. And in terms of the different, I hope everyone can see this, I know some of you are kind of back. The property in question is highlighted in black. In terms of the various color designations, in the soft yellow we have single-family uses. In the brighter yellow we have 2-family uses. In the orange we have multifamily. In the, we'll call it salmon, we have mixed-use development. The darker red would be office development. Purple would indicate church or house of worship uses, and P would be public, which is the firehouse that's located here. So as this map illustrates, which contains 44 parcels that we've reviewed, and have also been through the neighborhood extensively on a few occasions. Clearly there are a number of two-family uses existing in this neighborhood. There's 16 at least. I took a conservative approach, so in terms of categorizing the single-family and the office and even mixed-use developments, it wasn't abundantly clear whether or not they were single-family or if they had perhaps been carved up over time. I know I've lived in a two-family house and there was a single mail slot, for instance, where all the mail went into. So I took a conservative approach, and when it was clear that the dwellings were two-family, I indicated so, and when it was unclear, again, I took a conservative approach. But this sort of gives a lay of the land. Again, 16 of those properties are two-family, and at least 21 contain two-family, multifamily, and mixed-use with apartments above. And more than 50% of the properties are residential. As you've heard from our team, the client's proposal is to continue the existing two-family use. And again, technically, the conversion is from the prior approval of the assisted living or elder daycare use to a two-family. The changes to the dwelling are limited to what our architect testified to, most significantly the creation of a separate entrance to the first floor unit via the left side of the porch. And what that will do, we'll replace the bedroom in that area. So the first floor unit will go from three bedrooms, to 2 bedrooms. And there will be other minor adjustments, including new closet spaces, washer, dryer areas, etc. Parking area has been testified to, will be updated with 3 parking spaces. It currently has about 3 spaces, and the borough requires a minimum of 3 spaces, so we're compliant in that regard. And as has been testified to, we're removing that area of paving, which now brings us into compliance with respect to the impervious coverage. In regards to zoning, the site is located in the borough's POR, Professional Office Residential District. And within the code, it specifies generally the intent of the POR zone is to maintain the appearance of existing structures and specifically the residential character of those zones. And the POR zone permits a fairly long list of principal permitted uses. They include single-family development, mixed uses with apartments. I won't read them all, but generally I'll give you a sense. Community residences or shelters, various types of brokers, professional and business offices, medical and dental offices, legal services, social services, membership organizations, home health care services, and others. The zone also permits a number of conditional uses, including rooming and boarding houses, nursing and personal care facilities, and public uses in houses of worship, to note. Obviously, we're here before you for a D1 use variance to get approval for the two-family dwelling, which is not a permitted use in the POR zone. The guiding case law for such use variance relief is the Medici versus BPR company case, in which it establishes that applicants must address the positive criteria, or in this case, what's known as the site suitability test, whether or not the site can accommodate the use. The applicant must also demonstrate that the granting of the variance relief will effectuate the intents and purposes of the municipal land use law. And finally, we have to address the negative criteria in demonstrating that there'll be no substantial impairments to the public good, and address what's called the enhanced burden of proof, demonstrate that the proposal is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. So with respect to the positive criteria, and the issue of site suitability, again, the property is developed with a dwelling that, albeit it hasn't been permitted formally by the borough, it's been used as a two-family dwelling since at least 2011 and possibly before then. I'll note again that the lot is undersized by about 10%. Again, it's just over 9,000 square feet, where 10,000 square feet is required. It has a number of pre-existing non-conforming conditions that have been mentioned, and the lot is narrow and deep. And based on those conditions, I would suggest that the lot is more conducive to a residential type use of the property, and that I've noted that in my review of the surrounding area that the non-residential uses are typically occurring on larger lots in larger buildings and have areas of expansive pavement. I'll note also that the two-family use is a less intense use than the previously approved assisted living use. and a number of permitted uses that I listed earlier, both from a parking and traffic standpoint. To give a bit of perspective, this proposed use requires 3 parking spaces, where if it was a legal office with the requirement of 1 space per 200 square feet, we'd be looking at a requirement of 13 spaces. And that parking requirement would be even greater if it was a medical office. And so having the parking on site also minimizes, or the use rather, minimizes demand for on-street parking. The first time I was at the site was when school had just let out at the Immaculate Conception, and there were lots of cars and pickups and drop-offs right there. The school's property is right here, so we're about 3 properties in from that. And this intersection just gets clogged with parents coming and going, understandably so. So I think, again, to minimize the demand for on-street parking helps that situation, And I was there again today from about 5 to 6 and noted that there were few, if any, available on-street parking. So again, having a use that requires little parking relative to other uses, I think is significant in this case. And finally, to allow those non-permitted or non-residential uses, the parking requirement would require that we pave much of that green space in the rear yard, likely over the maximum impervious coverage requirement. So we'd be here asking for variance relief for that. And obviously there are issues with stormwater, and so there's a benefit to having a reduced impervious coverage in this case. I'll also note that the dwelling as it exists is not ADA accessible, and I think that's significant when considering whether or not the site could be used for non-residential uses, and also that there's no accessible parking. And again, other than just what I've indicated here in terms of land uses, having driven through the area, I believe this is the R2 zone to the north. In that zone too, there are a number of 2, 3, and 4 family dwellings. So again, the use that we're seeking to continue is, I would say, very much consistent with the existing neighborhood fabric and development pattern. And the POR zone in general, I would say, acts as a transition from the R zone, lower density R zone, to the central business district of the borough. I think as has been testified to, the site has functioned well. There aren't any issues. We don't have any neighbors here complaining. We expect the site to continue to function well. Certainly our client is willing to invest in the property to make it a nicer situation. And in general, I would conclude that the development presents a better planning alternative than those other permitted uses. I realize there are a number of existing non-conformities that we have to address. One is the existing floor area ratio that's non-conforming. So a D4 variance was identified, and specifically the property has an FAR of 27.7%, where 25% is required. And the test is generally whether or not the site can accommodate that bulk or floor area ratio. And so in answering that, obviously it's existing. The property was developed over 100 years ago. I saw a Sanborn map that dated back to 1910, and so it's at least that old, maybe even older, I don't know exactly. The FAR would conform if it was on a conforming lot, meaning if the lot was not undersized and was at least 10,000 square feet, it would be just about 25%. So it fits in with the neighborhood. There's adequate parking, and again, the development as it exists is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. So I would suggest that the lot can accommodate the FAR that exists today. With respect to the minimum front yard setback, I'll flip back to the area. Hopefully we can see something here. You'll notice that just about all these houses on West High Street are in a line. So our non-conforming setback of 15 feet, where 25 feet is required, is very much consistent with the existing development pattern on this block. The house is existing. The only way to conform would be to blow it down. And one of the goals of the town is to preserve the character of these types of neighborhoods. So I think it's a better situation for everybody to leave it where it is. It allows for both the parking area in the back and green space. With respect to the minimum side yard requirements, we have non-conforming side yards of 4 feet and 11.8 feet, where a minimum of 8 feet is required. A combined side yard of 20 feet is required. I'll note that to the upside down here to the west, where the dental office is, we have the 4 feet to the lot line, but then there's at least an extra 8 or 10 feet to that existing building So we're talking about a good amount of space between these dwellings. And we, as was noted before, there's a double driveway separating these buildings. So while the side yard setbacks are non-conforming, there is ample distance between buildings. It's an older neighborhood with a narrow lot, so this is fairly typical for that type of situation. So in terms of whether it's a C1 or C2, I would note that on the one hand it exists, and two, it's in keeping, with respect to the public benefit, it's in keeping with the fabric of the neighborhood. And the same would go for the front yard setback. In terms of the minimum driveway width, there's a 10-foot width requirement. We have a driveway width of 6.7 feet. That's been an existing condition. I believe on the Sanborn map, the garage was there back in 1910. So that's been the access point for a long time. And I would suggest that getting rid of that driveway would mean that there would be no parking on the property, and those cars would necessarily, for whatever use was there, would have to go on the street, which would be a neighborhood problem. And finally, I think the issue of asphalt thickness has been resolved. I think we're just going to pave it in accordance with the borough specs. So we're glad to do that. We have to, as part of addressing the statutory criteria, address the municipal land use law purposes. Our proposal advances several of those purposes, including Purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Purpose E, to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations. Purpose G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, and other uses. And finally, Purpose J, to promote the conservation of historic sites and districts. While this property is not specifically identified as a historic property, again, it goes back to at least 1910, and I think contributes would be the term to the larger historic character of the community. And so by maintaining that, I think we achieve that goal too. With respect to the master plan, I'll reference the borough's 2019 master plan, which discusses concentrating housing around the CBD to support businesses. Again, we're about 2 blocks away from the downtown area, and proposing 2 units to provide support to those businesses. The master plan also recognizes that the town is mostly developed and is comprised of mature neighborhoods, and promotes infill that is both compatible and preserves the character of neighborhoods. Again, I've discussed that. I believe we promote that desire. There's also a goal to provide opportunities for various housing options and provide housing at various price points. And again, there's an emphasis on preservation, and the master plan also identifies housing as a critical resource. But getting there, folks. So with respect to the negative criteria, almost at my last page, I promise. With respect to the negative criteria, what's that?
Gotta make your case.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to cross the T's and dot the I's. With respect to the negative criteria that has to be addressed, apartments in general are already permitted in the POR zone, albeit not exactly as exists and as is being proposed. We advance a number of the zone's intent, we advance the zone's intent to preserve the character of the historic structure. And I'll note that the zoning ordinance in general requires that development be consistent in appearance, with residential buildings in their general vicinity. And again, we comply with the parking requirement. I've noted several times now that I believe this presents a better planning alternative than most of the non-residential uses that could be there. We advance a number of the master plan goals and objectives. Having been to the site, knowing the situation and that it's existed for over a decade, I would suggest that there are no substantial detriments to the public good. And that, again, we're offering a lower intensity use. And I would offer that the proposed use will not exacerbate any of the pre-existing non-conforming conditions. So for those reasons, I believe we've satisfied the statutory criteria, and it's my opinion that the board can grant the request of variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I've got one question.
Yes.
As a planner, I'm not sure if this is your alley or not, but I suspect it is. You're creating desirable housing space, these 2 apartments, which definitely are upgraded. Yeah. From a historical perspective, if you talk about the appearance of the building, are window air conditioning conditions an attraction or detriment?
I would say that's a multifaceted question in terms of. You wanted a plain answer. So
That's the best answer I've heard in a while.
I would say, I would start with the hierarchy of priorities. One would be to create conditioned airspace for the people living inside. So that's number one. And you have several options to do that. One is obviously the in-window air conditioners. The other would be to provide the units with the ventilation. I'm not an architect. I've been involved in the construction industry. I know what's entailed with older houses. Sometimes it's physically impossible. I guess nothing's impossible, but impractical to, put in vents and have such a system. So I think our client will explore that if it's possible. But right now, the window units work. Driving through the neighborhood, there are a number of them. So again, I think the priority is to make sure the people that are there have air conditioning. And I think, we'll review it. I just don't know if it's physically possible at this point.
Well, I've been in construction for a long time. Yeah, well.
You predate zoning in Somerville.
Yes. Regardless of the cost, there's no doubt that the proper way to heat and cool this building is to put an air handler in the attic for the second floor and a similar unit in the basement for the first floor. So I would just say that to answer Rich's question, because you're not going to answer it.
I'm not sure. I haven't looked between the walls. I don't know what's possible. Of course, there are budgetary constraints. I know that's not the board's purview, but I know our client is willing to spend quite a bit on the things we've already discussed. And I think if he can do it at some point in time, I'm sure that would serve his interests and the residents of this one.
I have a question for you as well as our attorney. Page 9, 10, and 11, Roman numeral 1 or I through 16 XVI. Do we have to go through that at every application? Can't we just say refer to I through XVI and have it be, because we hear this every month and these things don't change. So my question is there some way of just saying, all right, whatever you say, 1 through 16, so without having to actually spurt it out?
You answer it, I'll answer it for you. There's two different approaches to it. Mr. Fisher knows what I'm going to say.
I think these outline the possible purposes that an application could apply to, but it's our job to note which ones directly apply and which ones we promote. That's what the statutory tests require. So that's why I noted purpose A, G, J, whatever it was, because those are the ones that I think we promote. We certainly don't promote all of them. Some are just unrelated. So could there be a shortcut in just referencing the Roman numerals?
That's what I'm asking.
I'll take that into consideration.
Dating back to the Medici case, one of the things the Supreme Court ultimately pointed out, as did Judge Furman in the Law Division and the Appellate Division as well, you really need to point out the exact purposes because it makes a complete case. If you Medici was all about an applicant and a planner and an attorney said, oh, this, it was about a hotel. Oh, this is a very, very good use and everything else, but there was nothing involved. And so the general approach has developed over the last 30 some odd years, 36, 35 years, that you put in, you say, these are the purposes we advance. And so it enables, if it's challenged, which use variances often are, so there's a basis that a court can use in evaluating the decision made by the board and the completeness of the record before the board. So
we need to include that.
You should do it. I mean,
it's a benefit for the applicant, Dan. I put it in there so
Certainly
the
not a
applicant knows what to cover.
benefit for the board too.
Yes,
because
correct. Right.
All right.
Remember back in the day, Dan, we used to get the boilerplate resolutions that we would vote on.
Yeah.
There was always, they appeared prepared before us for a C/D variance.
Right.
And we'll never go into detail.
Right.
And that's why they're all under you.
We can't do that anymore.
Okay.
Right. Those were the days, you give a 2-page resolution, not
Right.
anymore.
And we vote on at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Mr. Fisher, or did
I
you satisfied with what I pointed out?
In all the boards I represent, I've seen a few times just noting the letters, and I cringe.
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, good.
Actually, I didn't know whether to answer the question or clap.
That's why board meetings, people don't like board meetings on Monday night, because it takes away from the football game, because of all the purposes is on.
You've noticed. Is that it?
It's been a pleasure, yes.
Anybody from the board have any questions? Anybody from the audience?
One note, Mr. Fisher, I would like to make compliance with Mr. Cole's report a condition of approval. Does your client consent to that?
Sure, it has testified to.
Right, as modified, as modified and testified.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Summation, Mr. Fisher?
I'll keep this one brief. I think this is an excellent application. My client is trying to come into conformity with borough requirements. Put together an excellent case on why the variances should be granted, and I think this absolutely benefits the borough, and so we request that the board grant variances. Thank you.
Is someone going to comment on the sanitary sewer? There might be a connection fee depending on how SRDSA looks at this, depending on what's existing versus proposed on flows. Secondly, I have a comment about, because the building is so old, televising the line, make sure it's still intact.
Yeah, we can do a supervised.
Yeah, it's just run the camera down it, see what's there.
Find something interesting.
Yeah. And then it's just a letter, whatever the SRDSA comments on this, this has been brought out, depends what the previous use was. If it's a single family or 2-family, there will be a connection fee for the extra flows.
Right.
But if it's viewed something differently, whatever the authority, I need something for the files, what I'm saying, okay?
You want the inspection, that was one condition, I was want to confirm.
Yeah,
We have a second condition?
Now it's only condition,
Okay.
televise the sanitary sewer line, the presence of our office, televise it. All the rest of it we had discussed. HVAC, the noise, if they're gonna put them in, I think Rich was going at, I was hoping we'd sort out this window unit versus HVAC. Maybe the board will still do that. And I think the rest of the items we discussed.
Waiver on the tree.
No, he's gonna put the tree in.
Well, it would certainly appear that the sense of the board has been conveyed to the applicant in connection with HVAC. I mean, I don't believe we can force that, but certainly, in terms of all the reasons to do it, they've been entered on the record.
Well, there's one more reason, it's not our reason, but if you split the systems, each tenant's paying their own gas and electric.
Right.
So there's a recovery there, potential to.
You can recover that through rent or whatever.
Yeah, having a single furnace or boiler, whatever's in there, to do the entire building. Everybody pays their own bill.
So Cliff, you're saying that we cannot require him to put in central air conditioning?
I don't believe you can, no. I mean, I think that it's not an issue of I maybe disagree with, but it's really not an issue of habitability. There have been boards that have tried, and I've represented some of those boards, but I mean, I do ordinarily, I have issues when that becomes kind of a, you must do this. I mean, heat is one thing, because that's an issue of, obviously, it's an issue of habitability. We are increasingly getting to the point where, of course, colder temperatures are an issue of habitability. I know of no decision, and I will ask my learned colleague, we both serve together on the land use section leadership. If he knows of any such decision, I know of no such decision, and I'm not certain that a judge would sustain such a determination by the board, or direction by the board, excuse me. Again, as opposed to heat. Heat's a different story, because it's an issue of public safety and health and habitability.
Especially with the weather we've been getting, those 100-degree days, I think that'd be safety also for the older folks, which I am.
There's nobody much older than us.
Just my clients.
He runs the cemetery.
We prefer to call it subterranean low-income house. It's land use, Cliff. It's like-
Oh, I know. Mr. Cox would be would be a real big.
I actually had somebody ask if we took section 8. Okay, board. Any comments?
As long as he's added a comment. I think it's a plus. I really think, I've been watching that building kind of come apart for the last couple of years, and, you know, this is an improvement. It conforms with what some of us have been advocating for the POR district anyway. Why is it that restrictive?
It's still not changed, is it?
No.
I'm still working on it.
No. You know, but it's what's gonna happen, we're gonna have more of these applications because the office market is shot, and I don't think we're in our lifetime, it's not coming back. So I think these are two very, very nicely laid out dwellings, a nice big backyard, which is not that common. So if somebody can actually use the backyard in this particular instance, so it's overall a plus. Would like not to see it, we've got air conditioners, but abide by what the council is saying, but I would think if you look at it economically, it might make more sense to build the split systems, but that's none of my business, but I'm in favor of it.
Amen.
I'm in favor of it also. I encourage you to do the central AC. Aesthetically, it would look a lot better. We all live in the neighborhood. We want it to still be upgraded. Second is if we can encourage you to contact your neighbor on that driveway. I think that would be a great plus long-term and to eliminate another eyesore, because I walked it this afternoon. I know you're putting a lot of money into it, and it's something that we really appreciate.
Thank you. I definitely think about, trying to put the central air, but I want to see the walls, how to do the pipes.
Thank you, Mr. White. Anybody else with comments?
I second what Rich is saying. I think we're gonna see more of these, and I think it's a good use of the property.
It's also one of the best spots for us, the bike races.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Sure.
Right there, you make that turn, and
Okay.
been there many times, picking somebody up. Yeah, we are the apartment capital of Central Jersey. And when I look at, as I was telling Rich and Tony, I'm looking at the residential 2 families versus the new construction and what they're going for. I think they offer a heck of a lot more of a benefit to the town than what we're seeing down the street or all over. And I think it would incentivize a lot of the new people to, hey, I like this town, let me get involved, as opposed to, what we're seeing being built. I like it. And we're going to see more of it. It's not just in PORs and throughout the town. I told my wife, I said, if they're getting $3,100 a month for this house, what can we get for ours? And she said, where are we going to go? We're senior citizens living on a fixed income. But I like it. Good luck with it.
Mr. Chairman, want to know, there had been some discussion, I just want to make sure. Mr. O'Neill had brought up about putting some additional blacktop out near the, I guess the back porch or in that area.
And the turnaround.
Bump
Yes.
out.
Yeah, bump out, but we would comply with that.
Okay, very good. I know that was, made notes about it, so I wanted to mention.
Cliff, what other conditions do you have?
The only conditions I have so far are, compliance with the call report as modified by the board, which I don't think it modified all, I don't think anything was modified all that much. Sanitary sewer inspection via camera in the presence of the board planner engineer. And that would be it. I don't have other conditions, our standard conditions of approval, but I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, someone like to move it?
I'll move it.
Second?
Move in second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Art Adair.
Yes.
Darren Jeff.
I vote yes.
Roberta Carpenter.
Yes.
Brian Vidinsky.
Yes.
Morgan McLaughlin.
Yes.
Rich O'Neal.
Yes.
Ed Allen.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
I'll coordinate the preparation of the resolution with your office. Good to see you again.
We're gonna take 5-6 minutes.
Chairman.
Yes.
Vargas application.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Vargas application will not be heard tonight, and it may not be heard at all. Is anybody in here for the Vargas application? It won't be heard. I'll notify you. So we'll let you move for adjournment, and we can go on executive session. We'll move for adjournment of the regular meeting, and we'll be going into executive session. Move in second, all in favor? I'll come back in about 6, 7, 8 minutes for executive session.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, the stuff that was presented tonight was